One reason for optimism is that the threats to religious speech and religious freedom have become so notorious that our citizens are beginning to be concerned. A recent study showed that 1/4 of all Americans consider religion to be the most threatened of the First Amendment freedoms. Citizens are beginning to understand that the free exercise of religion and freedom of speech protect religious people as well as religious organizations. Concerned persons are beginning to initiate the legal actions necessary to expand the underdeveloped law of religious freedom. On the subject of religious freedom, leaders of various religious denominations, Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are coming together in unprecedented ways. New organizations and informal coalitions are operating to defend religious freedom. Another encouraging development in the world of ideas is the increased academic interest in finding ways to avoid an all-or-nothing approach to resolving the conflicts between civil rights non-discrimination claims and the free exercise rights pursued by religious groups. For example, an influential article by now Dean Martha Minow of the Harvard Law School concludes that, quote, accommodation and negotiation can identify practical solutions where abstract principles sometimes cannot, end of quote. She also observes that this approach is highly relevant to sustaining and replenishing both American pluralism and constitutional protections for minority groups, end of quote. Similarly, an amicus brief filed in the Supreme Court by the American Jewish Committee, while supporting same-sex marriage, urged that the court reinstate free exercise exemptions from generally applicable laws. Hopefully, such ideas will find the necessary judicial and legislative support to permit them to be applied and bear fruit. Perhaps this groundswell of interest in religious freedom confirms an intriguing hypothesis of one of the most creative social thinkers of the last century, Harvard University's Pitirim Sorokin. He hypothesized that major social events, viewed as calamities, can set in motion movements that produce exactly the opposite of the expected result. Applying that hypothesis to religious movements, Sorokin wrote, quote, calamities generate two opposite movements in different sections of the population. One is a trend toward unreligiousness and demoralization. The other is a trend toward extreme religious, spiritual, and moral exaltation, end of quote. After reviewing religious and other history, Sorokin posited this general rule, quote, the principal steps in the progress of mankind toward a spiritual religion and a noble code of ethics have been taken primarily under the impact of great catastrophes, end of quote. In this country, we have a history of tolerant diversity. Not perfect, but mostly effective at allowing persons with competing visions to live together in peace. We all want to live together in happiness and harmony. We all want effective ways to resolve differences without anger or contention and with mutual understanding and accommodation. We need to reawaken the bonds of affection that President Matthew Holland showed to be essential to the founding of our nation. Quote, broadly shared ideas of biblical love artfully refashioned into a guiding public principle, end of quote. We need such broadly shared ideals. We all have a vital interest in religion because religious belief in right and wrong is fundamental to producing the needed voluntary compliance by a large number of our citizens. In expressing my hope for mutual understanding and accommodation, I am not an unrealistic dreamer. I believe that in time, with patience and goodwill, contending constitutional rights and conflicting personal values can be brought into mutually respectful accommodation.